Hello, this is Julie Pettyjohn, and today I want to talk to you about the Creative Grids ruler, the Angle Finder, designed by Lynne Edwards. Before I show you the video of the first time I used this tool, I want to show you what the tool looks like. You can use it to determine what angle you have on something if you don't know, or you can use it for binding, which is what I did. Now you can see there's a 60 degree, there's 120, we've got 135s, 90. Anyway, notice on each one of these, there is a straight line and there is a dotted line in the middle of it. Those are the parts that we're going to be using today when I show you the first time I use this. Now, the video's a little slow because it's my first time and I'm taking things real slow and easy. But I want to show you the results because I'm really excited about it. The first thing I'm excited about is that I didn't have to make one big long strip for my binding. With this tool, you make 4 strips with tails on them. So, you know your width measurement, you know your length measurement, so you need to make a strip that is the measurement that you need for that one side, plus about 2.5–3 more inches to get tails. Also note that I am doing complete machine binding, so I am starting on the back with my strips. Normally, I like to put my binding on the front, turn it, and then hand stitch on the back. This time, I wanted to stitch by machine both sides, so you're going to see me laying the binding on the back. Also, I want you to note that I am laying it, I'm exposing about 1/4 of an inch off the back, so you'll see the white about 1/4 of an inch, then my binding. I love this tool because I use 4 strips of binding and because I get awesome, amazing mitered corners. The first thing you're going to do is measure your corner 1/4 inch in both directions and make a dot to let you know where you're going to start stitching and where you're going to stop stitching. Then you start pinning your border on the side, and I really like to use that purple thing because it has a little 1/4 inch square on the end of it, and I just go along double checking myself to make sure I have that 1/4 inch extra. Stitch your first strip 1/4 inch inside the binding, and then I wanted to show you the front of this quilt because when I trimmed my quilt, I trimmed it leaving 1/4 inch extra of batting beyond my quilt. So on the back, the backing comes all the way out, but on the front, I do have that 1/4 inch to kind of pad out my batting. Now you're ready to pin down your second strip of binding, leaving tails on both ends. Now, all you need to do is on that first strip is just fold that tail back up to get it out of the way so you can see where that dot is, that where you're going to start stitching, and you're going to put that pin in. You don't want to stitch them together. They're not going to cross over each other or be stitched together, but they're going to butt up against one another or come close to doing that. Here's another view of me checking to make sure that my stitching is going to end up all right. Once the second binding strip is stitched, you'll want to take the first binding strip and fold it over right on top of the second binding strip, the last one you just stitched down. And then you're going to take your tool and find your 90-degree angle, and it will be towards the tail. And then we're going to just line up the straight part leading up to that 90-degree angle, and we're going to lay it right along the stitches. And so you're going to lay it along the stitches, and then you're going to make a straight line. You're going to use a Mark Begone marker or some kind of water-soluble marker and make a straight line. Now this will not ever be stitched on. This line is a line we're going to use to line up our tool for the next part. And the next part we're going to, remember when I showed you that there's a solid line on that ruler? For every angle has a solid line. We're going to go to find our 90-degree angle, and we're going to lay that solid line right on top of the line that we just drew. Now for complete accuracy, it's also a good idea to take that top binding strip and fold it up. Think about folding it in half, although what I mean is use your stitches as the line that you fold your binding up to. So you'll fold it in half, pulling it up to the stitch line, and then you're just going to finger press, and now you will set your 90-degree angle, the solid line on the line that you drew, and the dotted line that's in the middle, you will line that up with the finger press that you just made. Then you're going to take a marker and you're going to mark the angle, the 90-degree angle, and that is going to be where you're going to want to stitch. So you will stitch on the top part of that triangle that you've made. You will not stitch the straight line at the bottom of that triangle. Use scissors or rotary cutter to trim very close to your stitches, but don't cut your stitches. Using your tool to help you, place the 90-degree angle on the corner and wrap your fabric around that and just really push to get that point just really nice and taut. When I started, right about here, when I started to see this really cool miter forming, I got so excited I could hardly stand it. And then I turned it over and look at the other side and how beautiful that is too. Both sides really, really pretty corners. And I mean, my corners have always had a problem. So this was the first really good corner on a binding that I think I've made. I was just thrilled. Let's watch this second corner in 3 times speed just to go over the steps again. Okay, we've stitched it all down. We're going to take one side of the binding, lay it over the other side of the binding, and maybe use a pin, get your tool, lay the side of it up against the stitching so that we can make our straight line. And the straight line we are using, we're going to get the 90-degree angle and we're going to put the solid line of the 90-degree angle on that line we just did, and we're going to then mark the angle up at the top. Now you might want to fold it over, make a crease, and find your center, but we're going to do that and then go stitch that. And once again, after we have stitched the top part of our little triangle, we're going to trim close to the stitches, and then we're going to use our 90-degree angle to help us turn the miter. Also, I'm just going to give a little added note. If you're having trouble getting a real good sharp point, you might want to turn it around to the 60-degree angle because it has a really sharp point and it can help just push that out perfectly. Here are some pictures of my mitered corners and my finished quilt with binding. If you happen to be struggling a little bit like I was with your corners and your binding and want to try a new technique, I would sure recommend this. I hope you've gotten something from this video, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time.